Welcome everybody to another episode of The Careful Boys. We have with us on the hot seat today Mr. Bobby Hundreds.
Oh wow. Wow.
Big deal.
So the way that hot seat works is you get asked a variety of different questions that get increasingly hotter in temperature.
Okay.
But we like to start off with Bart giving the coldest possible question imaginable.
Okay.
Best one of the day.
Softballs.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
This one's not really a softball, but
Since you like to draw, if you could use face paint to paint your wiener, anything, in any form or whatever, animal, insect, what would you paint your wiener into?
Why are we using face paint to do this? Is it because it's non-toxic?
why are we calling it a wiener?
A wee-wee?
A weenie.
Okay, that's better. Thank you.
Wee makes it sound a lot more girthier.
Yeah, bigger.
And would you choose when your wee-wee is sleeping or when it's working out?
Oh, I want him robust and ready for action.
Okay, then what would you paint on?
I just more surface area. What animal would I choose?
Anything. It could be a rocket. It could be...
Could be the Incredible Hulk.
Oh wow, gosh! You'd be surprised. I've never thought about this before.
I am surprised. Not a real artist.
I like hyenas because they have a sense of humor and they're funny, but they're also like bone-crushing predators.
But they don't do well on their own, which is kind of like your wee-wee is what you're saying.
So I would like to be in the company of many other wee-wees.
A pack. If you want to do some damage, you got to be in a pack.
Yeah, what do you call a pack of wee-wees? You know, there's like a murder of crows or like a flock of geese. Like, what is it when it's a bunch of wieners?
A large package? No, that's only one.
That's only one.
Sausage Fest? This is not...
Sausage.
Sausage fest.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's full circle.
So you would paint it a hyena?
Farmer John.
A hyena. I don't think it would be recognizable as a. I don't think anyone would be able to tell it was.
Do you think your wife would be like, oh wow, an armless, legless hyena?
I don't think that's what she would be surprised by. I think she'd be most shocked that I was painting my penis with my kid's face paint. I think that would probably be the most alarming.
Like, no, this is adult face paint.
Yeah.
So,
And then he's checking the door the whole time.
Oh, adult face paint. You're right.
Yeah.
Every
So
adult
it's good
has
news.
that in their medicine cabinet.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question, we turn up a little bit.
Oh, that wasn't okay.
That's cold.
That's a cold one.
The next question is, before the hundreds had the stability or like the I guess position that it has in streetwear before it made its like solid mark.
Okay.
On your way up, what was the brand that you're like, motherfucker, gotta?
Then I gotta get him. I gotta knock him out.
Yeah, or I gotta be like, if I could only be in their shoes.
Oh, if I could only be in their shoes. I mean, yeah, it was probably a mix of both of those things. When we were starting, what were we really looking at? I mean, there weren't brands that we hated or wanted to take over, but we were definitely inspired by A-Life, Supreme, Bape, Extra Large, Fresh Jive. And
Wow, Fresh Jive.
I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but there was a moment probably about 10 years ago when like Huff was really coming up and they were dominating. They had their weed socks and then they were doing these Thrasher collabs, and everyone in terms of on the category level, we were being on the same rack and shelf as that brand. So a lot of people are comparing us and we couldn't compare to Huff. I mean, Keith Huffnagel was, rest in peace, was like a veteran skateboarder and had like really great core community of people. But I always admired what they were doing 10 years. Every year it's a different brand. And it's not necessarily, I call them, I think I've talked about this before, these invisible wars where I pit myself against people whether they know it or not. And it's not necessarily that I don't like them, but it's also because for me, a lot of my inspiration, motivation comes from having to be competitive, right? And so sometimes
It's the Korean side of you.
I knew it. I was like, this man has not yet been proven to be Korean, but this part.
Invisible wars. Everyone's always like, oh, you're picking these fights. And I'm like, yeah, they're not even really personal. A lot of them are fabricated just to get me to be incentivized to like enter the fight, right? Like I need to do that. Surfing, we were talking about surfing. Surfing reminds me a lot of that too. It's just, you're constantly like running into waves and you're going out and it's nonsensical. The ocean's trying to spit you out onto the sand and you keep jumping back in. It's like, hey, they're telling you to like get, nature's like, please don't come in here. And you're like, no, I want to fight. I want to try. I want to go up against this thing. It's a very Korean thing, but.
When'd you get into surfing?
Probably about 8-9 years ago now. Yeah, so later in my life.
What made you go,
We were starting a brand with our friends, the Marshalls, who are like kind of like run Malibu. Yeah, and so Trace and Chad at the time were like, hey, if we're gonna like work on this thing together, you know, we really want you need to know how to surf. And I was like, I've always wanted to surf. I skate and a snowboard, but no one's ever taken me. And they were like, show up at Venice at 7:30 in the morning. I was there, and then I never looked back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Venice is so hard to surf on.
It is. So the thing is, if you can surf at Venice, you can surf anywhere.
Oh, that makes sense.
Dude, what if you didn't like surfing?
What did I?
What if you didn't like surfing, and then you had to pretend like you do for the brand thing?
It sucks.
That would happen to me. I just know it would. I'd be like, yeah, it was great out there. I like all these bruises on my legs.
That's so funny. I never even entertained that possibility. Thank God it worked out. We aren't involved in that brand anymore, but in the beginning we were just helping them out.
It got you hooked, huh?
Hey, was there like coming up? Because God, we all do this bullshit, right? Where like you get precious about your little thing.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're
What little thing? My little thing?
your penis.
Your hyena.
No, about your art and your like
that pretentious
designs.
artist shit.
Yeah, pretentious artist shit.
Yes.
And then and like you had to, you know, lash out at things that didn't need to be lashed out at, right? Maybe.
Yeah. What are we talking about? I feel like
We're talking about my deep-seated need for psychology.
Is there something you want to say?
Because we all do stuff, right? Like, I remember coming up in the comedy world and be like, that's hack. Like, did you see stuff in the fashion world and go, that's hack shit? Can't believe they're doing that shit. And then nowadays you would do that and you're like, why was I so stupid?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, we were very early on when we were starting the brand. I remember we were walking around with like a real streetwear OG. I'm not going to call him out by name, and we were walking by the LRG booth at the trade show. And in those early days, this is like very early 2000s, LRG was king, right? They were bigger than Supreme. They were like the biggest ones, and Kanye was wearing them, and you know they had all the rappers in their lookbooks and their catalogs and whatnot. And we were walking by, and the streetwear OG was just like, I never want to be that. And I was like, yeah, fuck that. I'll never want to be that. They're sellouts, and they sell to department stores, and you know
They got millions of dollars. All their employees have benefits.
They were like Jonas and Robert were like driving around Lamborghinis, Ben Baller, right? That was like the beginning of all of that. And we were like, we never want to be that. And then you know you get to a certain point where like, oh, I have overhead. I need to support employees. I have a family now. I want to like be able to.
Oh, why are you so greedy?
Yeah, and so now it's just like, well, I guess I kind of need to make money. It's not selling out. It's buying in.
Right, exactly.
It's buying in. Yeah.
No, that's great. No, because something that I've noticed about, especially the fashion world, like you mentioned earlier, it changes so rapidly.
Yeah.
You talked about reinventing yourself every day. Is that really a thing, or is that just something that people say? Like, how do you actually?
No, I really do feel like I'm having to reinvent myself constantly, just because the nature of everything is moving so fast, and especially because we're involved in the NFT and crypto and tech side, that moves even faster. Where rules that were set up, like goalposts that were set up today, they move like literally hourly. Where it's like, oh, this is what you're supposed to do, and now everyone's like, no, that's what you don't do anymore.
Then how do you ever find who you really are?
I think that's part of the appeal. You have to have a strong stomach for some of these businesses, right? Because the appeal is that every day, you know, my wife always says like every day you come home, it's like your job is so dynamic. It's like you know, it's so exciting, but also just so risky, right? You always have a different story to tell, and I'm like, it is, you know, like but I have crazy ADHD and I cannot focus, so it makes sense for me. I couldn't stick to the same task for 30 years. It's just not in me to do that.
But you never was like, oh, if only I had like a peanut farm.
Why am I talking like that all of a sudden?
Because you're troubled.
No, because you're troubled. Oh, if only I had a peanut farm, life would be so much easier.
Backs against the wall, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like every day you gotta change, and it's like.
I would love that. Yeah.
But what about a cashew farm?
That's what I'm saying, is that some people think that they want this kind of life, and they're like, oh, your life is so exciting, and every day you're doing these different things. I'm like, it is exhausting. Yeah. Right? Like,
the addiction of having novel things constantly is such a fucking pain in the ass.
It is.
Because I'm like, why can't I just be stimulated with eating oatmeal every fucking day?
Yeah.
I need
it
that.
should be
I want
enough.
that.
It's just, it's greed. It really is greed, and
Is it greed or is it stimulation?
It's
Joe's trouble now.
It's like the problem. It's a disease of abundance, right? This is not a scarcity economy or a scarcity society anymore, where for generations, like our parents, grandparents, that's what they always knew. So you had to save because you never knew when things were going to run out, and you never had enough. And so you really appreciated things. You had one of things if you could even afford that. But now we have like a real abundance problem, not just with like material possessions, but content, entertainment, right? There's like anything you want. You can order food at a whim. Like my kids use Postmates sometimes, and they don't even know what they're buying because everyone has just so much money. Like if you have means, like if you have wealth right now, you have way too much, right? More than you'll ever need. And if you have clothes right now, you have more clothes than you'll ever need, which is something that I have to deal with daily. Is like I'm constantly supplying clothing where I'm like, we have enough clothing on this planet to last for 2.5 generations. We don't need more product. You don't need that fast. You probably.
I needed it when you posted it on your Instagram.
I convinced you that you needed it.
Because like, damn, dude.
But I think that's like the real, like we have a real disease of abundance. It's not just like too much food, or it's not just too much. It's like too much of everything. Just too many movies.
Too many choices.
Too many choices. So like now we don't know. Choose too much news. It's too many pundits. Too many opinions, and it's like. Well, who are we? I don't know. You know, it's just, it's going to
So what excites you these days? What excites you? How do you get up out of bed? I mean, look, this is a dark world you just described.
It is dark. I think it's dark, but I actually think the world is better now in many ways than it was many years ago. There's a really, really great book called Factfulness by Hans Roslinger, who died in the process of writing. He was like very old. But even
does it just stop at one point?
It literally does.
Does it really?
That's his family comes in and finishes the book, and they're like, look, because he knew he was dying in the midst of it. He's like, this is my parting message with the world, that you're actually much better off than you realize. You know, the media and the social media is like telling you a certain way, but I mean, just think about like what we've been able to cure in terms of like infant mortality rates, right? And like global medication, we've been able to save. There's so much less disease now, and people aren't having to have like 10 kids in like third world countries in order for one to survive. Like they can have 1 or 2 children, they can get them education now in medicine, like,
and we got rid of abortion.
Massive progress.
5
Massive progress. Yeah. And so like I didn't even hear what that was. Maybe it's better I didn't hear.
Yeah, it was way better. Yeah, continue.
Just agree with it.
For the record, he heard it. He was with it. I pretended like I didn't hear it.
Okay. So, but yeah, I think anyways, we can go down. I think I'm actually really inspired by most people. Like I just think this is like a really great time to be alive. Like people are pursuing things that they were told for generations they can't do, and now you're seeing them having these breakthrough moments where they can try anything they want and make like somewhat of a living. A lot of people are like surviving doing that. That's great. Like that's really, really great news. Like being Asian American, seeing representation. Like, did you ever think that it would be cool to be Asian? And now it's cool on many levels in terms of like pop music and film and TV, and everyone's watching Squid Game.
That sounds really boring. I'm asking another question.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it wasn't loud enough.
Also, that's your opinion. That's not everyone's opinion.
It is my opinion.
Dude, I'm gonna punch this guy.
In all the years you've done business, what was the single hardest thing that has ever happened to you?
NFTs.
Oh,
For real? Because you lost a lot of money?
It was the hard, and it continues to be the hardest thing.
You did your own project?
you lose your
We did.
ledger?
No, I've never lost my ledger. Thank God. Yeah.
What was hard about it?
Is it just
So what people don't understand about NFTs is if you're setting it up the honest way, right, as honest as it can get, you're actually building a project that you're trying to involve the community, right? And
You don't build the rug into it?
Right.
Yeah, what do you pull? Well, you have to start at that rug.
Yeah, you build the rug into it.
You're essentially like raising money for a company, and then you raise the money and you leave the company, which is when a lot of people are building NFTs, that's how they think of it. They're like, oh, I'm creating a project of these collectibles, or I'm selling art, and then I mint it, people buy it, and then I'm done. But you're departing from the company, that you're exiting, which is not fair, because those people are like, oh, I bought it and I want you to do something with this.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Most people didn't know that this time a year ago. They were looking at NFTs almost like collectibles, like that's just it. And then Bored Apes came around, and people were like, oh, you can actually build utility and meaning into these collectibles. And so to put out a project, we did 25,000 NFTs. They sold out in 40 minutes. The real work began we worked on those for like 8 months. I thought my job was done. And then the work really began the next day when people were like, okay, now what are you doing for us?
Yeah. Where's the roadmap?
Right. And it's a different relationship than a brand to a consumer. Consumers are essentially fans, where they're just like really happy just to be a part
But they're
of it.
like shareholders.
These people are shareholders and partners, and they feel like they're owners. Not everyone, but there's like this conflation, because I was coming into thinking of more as collectibles, and we're here for the art, and that's like the approach we're bringing in it with. But a lot of these people are traders, day traders, flippers, who are like, no, we're investors. And that's the murky gray territory of NFTs that makes it dynamic and fun, but it also confuses a lot of people because you see a lot of projects fall apart because they're not equipped to be able to provide anything. Thankfully we were, right? Because we're an actual company that we're like, no, we're gonna be doing a lot of things for you forever. But it's hard because we've never had to share the company before, the brand or the decisions. That's what Web3 is about. It's decentralizing. It's not just you supporting a company anymore. It's like you actually have say in like a vote.
Democracy sucks.
What happens, right? And so, right, like this gets into like political issues as well. And it's like, do you want democracies or illiberal democracies where you're do you really want everyone to vote, right? So it's like, do you want that? Because now you're getting into territory where you're getting certain people involved in the government that you probably don't want. So,
but isn't this more akin to like, you have people who have a stake in it, right? They actually bought into it, so it's almost like shareholders voting.
Yeah. So then, if you look at it the positive way, which we do, is that these people are actually there to help you. Right? They're not there to decry you or to say that you guys are rugging. They're actually like, no, we're here to help. And so instead of looking at it like it's baggage, you can look at it like now you have thousands of partners who are like, I'll do anything to help spread the word. So your brand now moves like exponentially faster, which it does now, right? And so there's two ways of looking at it. If you look at the negative way, you're saddled with like complainers and you're doing customer service and trying to appease people. Or you can look at it the way that we do, which is, oh, these people are comrades. Right, like they're here to all see us win this, and we can move so much faster in different territories we never had access to before. So they're all doing marketing, they're all selling, and they're all preaching. There's like me, and now there's thousands of other me's who are in their neighborhoods and communities telling people about like the hundreds.
You don't have to work so hard.
And I shouldn't have to work so hard.
You can attack a lot of niches that way, right? So like, there's a lot of community involvement in these niches where they have governance votes, and now they actually have a reason to support your burgeoning ecosystem. It's not just some bullshit thing like we all go vote and then we all get disappointed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, your vote can actually matter in the long run.
You can directly influence the future of the project.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think about the NFT market right now though? Like I don't know what you would argue how much of them is a scam. Like, would you say?
I'd say a lot of them are scam, but it also goes into like, what is a scam, right? And I don't mean to get super existential and deep and philosophical about it, but like, what is a scam? I was just talking about Veblen goods. Like, all luxury goods are in a way a scam. Like, you don't need a Chanel purse. Like, a regular purse is fine. Like, that's a scam.
But then she's not happy for like at least 3 months. So you have to get it.
Exactly. So
That's true, because is it a scam?
what is a scam? Like, how do you define that?
If someone is just hopeful, they have no experience, and then they manage to convince everybody, like, yo, give me this money, I have this great idea, I don't have any experience, but believe in me. And then they get the money and they fail. Is that a scam, or you just invested into someone that
I think
didn't
that's
work
a
out?
case-by-case
Exactly.
basis. I think that's a person-by-person.
Because I see the NFT crypto space kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
You have a bunch of guys that, they're like, yo, I'm really trying to make this happen.
Yeah.
Not all of them work out. Some of them are outright scams where they're like, hey, let's do this hustle.
There are a lot of those.
Were they predetermined to hustle?
Right,
That's
but then
a scam
not
for
all
sure.
failures are scams either.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's a real gray area, and I think when there's something new, anytime there's an emerging like industry or whatever, it just happens this way.
Or even in business, right? Like they say 90% of businesses fail within 5 years.
Yeah, so were those scams?
None of them are meant to be scams. They're trying to make it.
And in the next 5, it's 50%.
Well, isn't the underlying tech of it? I mean, wasn't this, for me anyway, for NFTs, just talk shop a little bit of NFTs. Like what we just went through was almost like the '90s tech stocks bubble, like Pets.com and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So like a lot of failure, but maybe well-intentioned failure, right?
Yeah.
But then the underlying tech, like the stuff behind NFTs,
It's very real.
very real.
Right.
Yeah.
So that part of it, the blockchain technology is very real, and then that, for most people who know anything about tech, and that's why there's so much investment going into blockchain technology. We're going to be paying receipts, and they'll be on the blockchain, and there'll be there's companies right now that I know they're like, you pull up to a parking meter and you can pay it through your car instead of having to get out and doing the thing, and that's all recorded on blockchain. So we're gonna need all that type of tech. The way that it's being marketed and packaged right now as like the pets.coms or the whatever, it looks silly, but that's the part of any burgeoning industry is like you're gonna have these capitalists and opportunists coming in trying to make money doing it, and then they're gonna fail, and then you're gonna be like, well, what did we actually build with the tech in the meantime.
What's your take on the metaverse?
I think most of what the narrated, like the mediated metaverse, like what you hear about is complete bullshit. Like that part of metaverse is just a repackaging, a rebranding of VR, AR, and video games, right? And
Well, it's all fragmented too. There's no one metaverse. It's all...
Right. And so like a real true metaverse, which we'll see if it ever happens, if anything it'll take 5 to 6 to 10 years, is an interoperable metaverse. So the skin you buy in Fortnite you can use in Valorant, and then you can bring it into Facebook, and like it should work like that.
But you're a lawyer, imagine that.
I know. That's the nightmare, is getting Activision and Riot and all the game companies to work together.
Why would they?
This is insane. Why would they do that?
Let me ask you a question about the metaverse then. Let's say you're in the metaverse and your wife pisses you off in the metaverse. Can you sock her in the metaverse?
I would
Sock her avatars, pow, 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 pow.
I would probably not do that.
Why?
You'd hire someone else.
What, you wouldn't even beat up your wife in Mortal Kombat?
I cannot beat up my wife. This is the thing. My wife is so much stronger than I am. Like she's like she works out constantly.
In real life, but in the metaverse.
I think even in the metaverse, she would really put me in
Her
a headlock.
stats would just be way too high.
Yes. Yeah. She's very strong.
Sounds like a button masher to me.
So for you and Ben have been partners how many years now?
19 years.
So
Yeah.
that as impressive as that is, that you guys have never had a falling out period.
Oh
at all?
no! There's always falling outs. Of course, there's always arguments and fights, right? I don't trust people who are in relationships and they're like, "Oh, we never fight." I'm like, "Oh, you're gonna break up, and it's gonna be disastrous." How do you know someone without fighting? You ever had like a close friend?
You have to fight to get to know someone.
Yeah. Like you need to see that side of them. It's all depths and nuances of who people are. It's like the nasty, dark, insecure parts, the scared parts, the fearful parts, and then like the confident versions of themselves. Like you need to know all that shit.
Has that ever happened where one of you were like, "I'm out of here"?
Yes, multiple times. And it's it's always me. I'm like, because I was always like a runaway as a kid. I ran away so many times, like, because that's just my nature. Anytime there's something difficult happens, I want to run, and I'm just like, fuck this, I'm out. I like doing the really ceremonious, like, I'm out of here, like, I'm gonna show you, but it always like backfires on me. It's like the Jerry Maguire, like, I'm out of here, and then everyone just returns back to work. Like no one really misses you or cares.
The Office does really well.
Everyone does better actually without me.
They all get raises.
I know that, but yeah, there have been many moments where I've just been like, I don't know how to deal with this, and I'm out, and it's just, like 40 minutes later I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, like I don't really mean
That's crazy.
because I can't be me without Ben, and Ben can't do what he does without me. We are very much aware of that, but of course we're brothers, we're family, we're just.
You never felt one day, fuck this, I could do this on my own.
I think every entrepreneur thinks that, like always, right? And I think that's just like a very natural feeling of like, I don't need anyone, I can do it on my own. I know I can do it on my own.
Yeah.
Do I want to do it on my own? No. Will I be able to do it as well on my own? Definitely not. Like there are things that Ben does that I will never know how to do. I don't have the talents, and I don't want to do it.
You don't ever like want to just slightly like cheat on Ben though? Like you see like another guy and you're like, damn, this guy's better at Ben than Ben is.
I want to start a company.
I've never met anyone who's better at being Ben than I really have never.
What's Ben good at?
I think, well, first of all, he's number one, he's good at dealing with me. Because I'm like a very messy person. So he's like the most patient with me, right? And then I think I can say the same for him. I write about this in the book where his friends at first were just like, how do you deal with him every day? I'm like, I don't know. I usually have a pretty short patience for a lot of friends. I'm like not the chillest person. But for him, like, I love him. We just have so much respect for each other. So that's something I talk about a lot too with like relationships is, it's like, do you have, it comes down to respect. And like, I never lose respect for the guy. I trust him and I believe in him. And so like, it'll be fine regardless of what we go through, But I've never met anyone else who I've been like, I've ever seen that. And no, never wanted to cheat. But that's a really interesting.
I've seen Ben hang out with like the Supreme guys a lot lately.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you hood hopping, bro.
Yeah, Ben's always had like in and out with them, and I'm like, what are you guys doing over here? And he goes, oh, don't tell Bobby you saw me here. That's what he says.
What do you tell your kids about, because we were talking about the dark future, all that stuff. Yeah. How do you prepare them for a potential dark future?
I think we're very honest in our house talking about all this stuff. We talk to them just like they're regular folks our age. And I think some people, they think it's a little too extreme. They're like, oh, do you have to talk? I'm like, yeah, I just,
How old are they?
they're 13 and 10, but we've been ever since they were kids.
Old enough.
Anything that was on the news was fair play, right? And like controversial or embattled topics like transgenderism, for example, or just like presidential races, like these are all things that we openly discuss because I'm never clear or adamant about I have the answers or the truth. I think all that stuff is malleable and like not fixed, right? So it's just like, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. I don't know. Dad, why is it like this? Or why did they say that? Or how can it be this way? And I'm like, I don't know either. Let's try to, you might teach me more than I might teach you on that subject. I don't know. So we're very transparent about it. And I also I try as much to balance, like when there's a lot of dark stuff in the news, school shootings, right? Like also just talking about, well, what was war like in past generations, right? And we don't have as many of those types of wars. This is a different kind of war we're embroiled in. But the wars my parents grew up in during the Korean War, like, previous situations with like Japanese imperialism and like rape and torture, like we don't have that. And thank God we don't have that. But this is a different kind of war in a different kind of context now that we're trying to navigate. And I'm like, you're going to war every single day, just like my parents did, just like their generations before did. It's a different kind of war. Some of it's psychological and digital warfare, like, people hacking in. Yesterday, I think this week, LAUSD, my kid's school district got hacked.
By Russia or something?
I don't know who hacked it, but everything was offline for the day. They had to reset their passwords. It's a huge disruption.
Whoa.
Right? And I'm like, that's warfare. Right? I don't know if it's coming internationally or if it's domestic, but it's some type of terrorism that you guys went off the grid and now we lost a day of education. Like that affects us as Americans. It affects us as citizens. So that's something my grandparents never had to deal with.
Yeah.
But like that fucking sucks that you had to do that. So we try to be as relevant and subjective as possible when we're talking about like, every day like people are dying of guns in this country and it's like it's a horrible tragedy and like we got to figure out ways to amend that. But it's also like, let's be real, it's not like the world is ending, like it's not dismal, like we can fix these things, we're here to fix the things. That's, and
You infuse it with hope.
What's that?
You infuse it with hope.
I try to, just like practical realism, I think that it's important to just be real. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. I'm like, yeah, that's like terrible that happened. And we watch the news together. We'll watch certain clips of, families mourning lost ones. And I'm like, God, thank God that didn't happen to our family. Thank God we don't have that here. And like, let's be grateful that we have this every single day. So like, we're very realistic about things, but just let's understand what else is happening outside of this media spotlight or what everyone's talking about. There's also things happening in the shadows, right? And so just trying to make them as aware as possible of everything going on instead of just what these people are talking about all the time. I think that's important.
Damn. That's a lot of work being a parent. I'm afraid to be a father. I'm just already figuring out my escape plan.
It's great. Kids are amazing. I think people these days, they treat kids like they're really fragile creatures.
No, I can't wait to abuse them.
Only like kids, this was like the first generation, the last couple generations to treat children this way. Before, like in the early 1900s, kids worked on the farms. You bred kids to work.
Hell yeah.
And so it's like as soon as you can stand up, like get to work, and you're tough and you're resilient, and like death is a part of life, and like we're gonna all go through this together. And now it's just like we treat them like they're these like flowers, and they're not. They're amazing, like, and they're so bright. I'm sure I remember being a young person always being like, why are your parents talking to me like this? I understand what they're saying. They're really brilliant creatures, and so it's like they're actually fine on their own. Like my great-grandfather immigrated from Korea to Japan by foot, barefoot, 6 years old, eating out of the garbage cans, like eating trash. It was a very common story. There's a book and a film called Pachinko that kind of tells a lot of this migration from like Korea to Japan. But it's like, they were fine, and like they figured it out. Like kids are fine,
The food back then was all organic.
Probably, they didn't have gluten allergies.
Better trash quality.
What I hate about me is that I just logged that away in my brain to call your grandpa a trash eater later.
Yeah, but your dad eats trash.